Welcome back to The Grind. In this video, I wanted to discuss the King Groot buff and how I am pretty excited actually to see this, partly because my Cosmic roster is not that impressive, especially as 6-star champions, except for my recent pull of Corvus Glaive. However, I do have a maxed out 5-star Corvus Glaive, but I do have King Groot as a 6-star champion, and I'm hoping that he does turn out to be a rank 2 or even 3 worthy champion. So King Groot has actually a lot of changes that were implemented for him, and he's going to benefit in longer fights, and we'll talk about why. But first, let's take a look at his immunities. So he is immune to bleed still, but he's also now uniquely immune to power drain and power burn effects. Now this is incredible because it is completely unique. No or very few champions are immune to power drain or power burn effects, and a lot of them are actually specific to what opponents they're facing. But King Groot will now be immune to all power drain and power burn effects, and this will actually work for those nodes that take your power away and give it to the opponent, or just drains your power completely. And those are quite annoying because it forces you to play in a certain way or be more aggressive or try to get an in when you shouldn't and end up making mistakes, or just giving power to the opponent and then you die because they throw a special 3. But King Groot will be able to ignore all of that. So that is something that I'm actually very excited about. It's a very niche quality to have, but it's not something that you have access to in many situations, and therefore I think it would be nice to have King Groot on the roster, even if just for that alone. But we're going to see his damage is actually going to be quite improved, and he even has more utility. Well, maybe it's not necessarily more utility, but easier or better utility now. It's built up a little bit. So King Groot will have Fury buffs, and they will increase his attack rating by 501, and they last 13 seconds. And then anytime King Groot would receive a debuff, he spends one of them, and after half a second purifies that debuff. So he can shrug off debuffs, but remember, you only have the Furies for 13 seconds, or a limited number of Furies, and then you go on a 13-second cooldown before you'll get those Furies back. So let's talk about Malice. This is a new implemented label, I guess, for his Fury state. When he has Furies active, he will have a passive Malice, and that gives his Furies extra potency. Now, every time the cooldown ends, he'll get 3 Fury buffs as Malice initiates again, and when all the Fury buffs end, or you consume them all, so either you use them all up or after 13 seconds they expire, then Malice goes on cooldown for 13 seconds. Once that 13 seconds is up, Malice will trigger again, grant you 3 Fury buffs plus any extra ones that you may have gained, which we'll talk about shortly, and that Malice gets more and more potent as the fight goes on. So as the fight goes on, up to a maximum of 100 seconds, you'll gain up to 100% Fury buff potency. So at the start of the fight, the Furies will just be doing what they do, but after 100 seconds, so just under a couple minutes, a minute and a half or so, just over a minute and a half, then the buffs now will be twice as effective. So instead of each Fury granting 500 attack rating, each one will be granting over 1,000 attack rating. And that is only while Malice is active. And you get additional effects on the abilities or special attacks while Malice is active. But while Malice is on cooldown, any attack from either champion has a 20% chance to grant 1 Fury charge. When the cooldown ends, each of those Fury charges are converted into a Fury buff as you re-enter Malice. And then each time, again, while Malice is on cooldown, each time King Groot's attacks are evaded, auto-blocked, or missed, it'll be 2 Fury charges. And it's a cooldown of 3 seconds, so you can't just get like 2 or 3 attacks in real quick, unfortunately, to stack up those Furies. But in that 13-second downtime, let's say you're fighting Invisible Woman, you can parry, attack into her while she has her shield up. That will be a miss. You can dash back a couple times, and you might even be able to get another attack in after 3 seconds on the miss. Or someone, it might be kind of hard to get full advantage of this, but at least you can get something during that period of downtime to build up your malice state even further against champions who will auto block you or will evade or will miss you. But you want to try to activate that in a controlled manner if you can, because obviously you don't want to get countered. And then heavy attacks will pause all poison and armor breaks on the opponent for 3 seconds, but if malice is active, you can spend a fury buff to pause it for 6 seconds. So 3 seconds isn't that long, but while malice is on cooldown, if you want to keep up your poisons and armor breaks, if you're playing aggressive and you're able to chain on a couple heavies in the corner, then that can be a way to pause all these debuffs while you're kind of waiting out the malice cooldown. And then when malice triggers again, if you don't want to spend your furies that way, you can stop doing the heavy attacks and then go into the other ways of spending it, or just keep beating into the opponent and dealing as much damage as you can. So special attack 1 will inflict 3 armor break debuffs. Each will, there's 3 hits of the special 1, and each hit has a 100% chance to activate it. And then you can spend a fury while malice is active in order to make that armor break indefinite. So a permanent armor break. But what I think it is there's 3 hits, meaning 3 armor breaks, and if you have 3 furies, you'll spend all 3 furies to make all 3 armor breaks permanent. So at the very start of the fight, if you can race up to a special 1 and spend that during malice, then you would have 3 indefinite armor breaks, which actually would be quite nice against a lot of opponents. And it will put you back into that cooldown phase right away, so you can start building up extra fury charges and then get to your next malice state even quicker. And then special 2, eternal toxicity. This is where you get your poison debuff from, but also now each hit will deal additional direct damage, which is very nice, and that damage will be tripled against robots because obviously you can't poison them. So that is a way to get a little extra damage and not be completely weakened against robot champions. So 100% chance to inflict poison, reducing healing effects by 30% and dealing 3,300 direct damage over 10 seconds. And if you have malice active, you can spend a fury to increase the poison duration by 100%. So it would be a 20-second poison. And then if you go into malice, you can then pause the poison a few times by throwing heavy attacks while in malice to keep it active until you get back, while malice is on cooldown, until you get back into malice. And then the special 3 is a way to heal. So 100% chance to gain a regeneration buff, recovering 10% of health over 3 seconds. And then if you are heal blocked at all, it'll actually pause the regen, which is quite nice. So that way you don't waste all your healing. And then malice, if you spend 1 fury buff, you get a 50% bonus duration on that healing buff. So you'll get 15% health back for every special 3 if you do it during malice, which is quite nice for some sustainability. And then his signature ability is actually very nice to have. It gives him a lot more regeneration, as well as it will give him extra poison duration while malice is active, depending on how long the fight has lasted. So almost or up to another 100% poison duration if the fight has lasted 100 seconds. And once again, every time the malice goes on cooldown, with the signature ability, you'll gain a regeneration buff and recover 7,500 health over 13 seconds. And so if you can race through and spend all your furies really quickly and enter malice or go into cooldown on malice again, you can speed up how many times you trigger the regen buff, which makes him like a really sustainable champion. He already is a really sustainable champion, but now he has access to all these other mechanics that will make his damage much more tolerable for most players. And the utility with, indefinite armor breaks and the longer poisons and pausing these debuffs makes his utility a little bit nicer. I know he did have a lot of those things previously, but now there's just a little bit easier access to all of this. And I do like the malice little bonus that over time, as the fight goes on, he gets stronger and stronger. And you can, if you don't get very many furies during one malice cycle, you can just spend all those furies really quickly and enter the cooldown again and start trying to build up more of those fury charges so that the next time you re-enter malice, you'll have even more furies to deal even more damage and potentially utilize those furies for his utility. So let me know what your thoughts are. I'm looking forward to testing out the buff and hopefully taking him to rank 2 and maybe in the future to rank 3. Let me know what your thoughts are. I do hope you enjoyed this video. Good luck, and I hope to see you in the next video.